Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, everybody, and happy Saturday. And welcome to another information-packed episode of House Talk Pregame. I am your host, family therapist and empowerment coach, Dr. Lauren Pitt. I'm joined every week by my two amazing co-hosts and former HBCU scholar athletes, Jared Johnson and Ron Ransom. Our third co-host is my son, Andre Garlick. We're really looking forward to him joining us in a couple of weeks or so as we go off basketball season. For our team here at Pregame, folks, it's all about family, yours and ours. Week after week, we shine light on our HBCUs and provide tons of valuable information to help you and your family, student and professional athletes and their family, and our Heritage Sports Radio Network family take the necessary steps to transform your lives and live the life you love living in more educated and empowered ways. Also, you can catch us on HSRN every Saturday at this time, 11 a.m., and also on Saturdays at 10 p.m., as well as on Sundays at 6 p.m. We have an absolute fantastic, a great information-packed show lined up for you today. Ronnie?
Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody's having a great Saturday so far. So during today's show, we want to hear from you. We got a great show today lined up for everybody. We want you to call in with your questions and comments at 515-605-9744 or email your HBCU shout-outs, questions, or comments to hcpregame@gmail.com. And also, Dr. Pitts is on Facebook Live as well, live streaming the show right now. So if you're on Facebook Live, type in any questions or comments on her feed, and we answer them during the show. Jared.
How are we doing in reverse, Ronnie? I thought you was taking the description this time, but it's cool. That's what the team's for. We're coming back again, house game, pre-talk. We're coming at you guys every single Saturday, transparent, giving you guys a rundown on what's going on in the past week, what's going on in the sports world, and our social lives, personal lives at some point, and getting to the point of being very knowledgeable, providing insight in the sports world, HBCU, of course, because that's what we love, and then also some of the things going on this week, like you guys have seen on TV, and how it affected us or affected people you know. We're here to give you help, provide peace, an outlet, and here to optimize and make sure this is a great week going forward. Back to you, Dr. Pitts.
So every week, folks, what we started doing last year, and we're going to do this for probably, I would say, about another 4 weeks, till the end of January. February 6th is the last time we're going to do it. But we offer a diagnosis of the week, and the reason why we do that is because as mental health professionals, Ronnie and I are very moved by the mental health stigma that goes on in Black and brown communities all across the nation and all around the world. And we recognize as Black and brown persons ourselves that a big part of this stigma comes from a lack of knowledge. So we felt it important to educate and empower our listening and viewing audiences all over the globe to make you all aware of the mental health and mental wellness information, tools, if you will, that we strongly believe will be instrumental in helping you to make well-informed decisions about your own mental health and perhaps about the mental health of those that you love and care about. There may be things going on that you're not even sure. You may be attributing what you see to just somebody being in a bad mood, or you know she cray, or you know he cray, you know he just moody, or they got COVID, brain or something like that. But this is real, folks. This is real. And we want you to make well-informed decisions, so we've taken it upon ourselves to provide that information. Yeah. Today's mental illness that we're going to be talking about briefly is separation anxiety disorder. Now, some of you might see this evidence in your children because every time you get ready to go to the store or, go to the bathroom, the child is freaking out and acting like they don't want you to leave. And we know that this is something that in most kids, it is something that they outgrow, typically by the age of 3 years old. But if you're still seeing the child having a difficult time making the adjustment after the age of 3, when you as the parent or you as the caregiver, or even in some cases the babysitter, whenever you're leaving them, that is something that you definitely want to take a closer look at. I know my niece is my sun, moon, and stars next to Andre. She is everything to me. And because my sister and I worked at opposite times, I had a lot more flexibility. When I was in grad school, literally from the time my niece was born, I had her every day of her life. Up until she was 3 years old, a little over 3. But when I moved to Barbados, that was a traumatic experience for her, one that she has never quite recovered from. When you factor that into a number of other challenges that she had going on, it has impacted her behavior, and it's something that we remain sensitive to, because it all started from broken attachment, which we're going to talk about more in depth next week. But it was a break in attachment that created this separation anxiety for her. So just bear in mind, in some children, separation anxiety is a sign of a more serious condition that is separation anxiety disorder. And it can start as early as preschool. I will say that with my niece, she started preschool, pre-K3, and it was definitely something that was problematic and continued to grow in severity of that problem. So there you go, Ron. If your child's separation anxiety seems intense or prolonged, especially if it interferes with school or other daily activities, or includes panic attacks or other problems, he or she may have separation anxiety disorder. Most frequently, this relates to the child's anxiety about his or her parents, or in the case of my niece, another very, very close caregiver, which is what I was for her literally from the time she was born. Some symptoms that you need to be aware of are, first and foremost, the separation anxiety disorder is diagnosed when symptoms are excessive for the developmental age and cause significant distress in daily functioning. Symptoms may include recurrent and excessive distress about anticipating. My niece does not handle anticipation well at all. Anticipating or being away from home or loved ones, constant excessive worry about losing a parent or other loved one to an illness or a disaster, constant worry that something bad will happen, such as being lost or kidnapped, causing separation from parents or other loved ones, refusing to be away from home because of separation, not wanting to be home alone and without a parent or other loved one in the house, reluctant or refusing to sleep away from home without a parent or other loved one nearby, repeated nightmares about separation, frequent complaints of headaches, stomach aches, or other symptoms when separation from a parent or loved one is anticipated. Separation anxiety may be associated with panic disorder and panic attacks, excuse me, repeated episodes of sudden feelings of anxiety and fear, or terror that reach a peak within minutes?
So I want to share a quick story about separation anxiety. My first client in the mental health field actually had separation anxiety, and he had the severe modifier of it, which is, pretty severe anxiety when it comes to separation. So I had been working with him maybe 6 months in at this point, and I had went on vacation. And, of course I had told him, leading up to it that I was going on vacation. I was telling his grandparent at the time, because that's who he was living with. I was going on vacation, and I didn't think nothing of it. So when I got back, they were the first person I called, and his grandmother was like, "I'm so glad you're back," because he was suspended the first day I was gone, and at home, he was destroying toys in his room every single day, upset, crying, having tantrums all throughout the house the whole week I was gone. And it was because he had formed an attachment with me already, and the fear of, when I told him I was going on vacation, the fear of me not coming back or seeing him anymore, that whole week, he had just lost it. So with, that specific client, I had to start letting him know, at least when I made my vacations, I had to start letting him know 2 months in advance I was going to be gone and that I was going to come back. So like Dr. Pitts was saying, while, symptoms and behaviors of separation anxiety are very common in, young children, especially children who are going off to school for the first time, that's their first time being away for a caregiver or their parent for a long period of time, that's pretty common. However, like she said, when these symptoms and behaviors start to prolong after 4 weeks of consistent displayment of them, you might want to start to seek out, a mental health professional or your primary care physician. So before going to your first appointment, here's a list of some things that you might want to start to jot down before going into your appointment. I always tell parents, the more information and evidence you have for your suspicions going into an appointment with a mental health professional or your doctor, give you the best chance at getting the best answer and solution for what you have going on. So, make a list of your child's symptoms of anxiety, know when they occur, whether anything seems to make them better or worse, and how much it affects their day-to-day activities and interactions. What causes your child to be stressed? Include any major life changes or stressful events your child dealt with recently, as well as any past traumatic experiences. Any family history of mental health problems, whether it's you, your spouse, your parents, grandparents, siblings, or any other children that you might have who are displaying any mental health problems. Any physical health problems, so if they have any physical ailments or any other mental health concerns. All medications, vitamins, herbs, or any other supplements, their dosages and how often they're taking it. So once you get to the appointment, here are some questions I want you to think about that you can ask the mental health provider or the physician when you get there. Is my child going to need any tests or assessments to confirm or deny that they have separation anxiety or maybe another mental health condition? As Dr. Pitts was talking about, as separation anxiety gets worse and it goes untreated, it can lead into more severe attachment disorders that we can talk about next week. Will my child need any medications? And if so, what kind of medication? Are there any other alternatives, any holistic alternatives? In addition to treatment, are there any steps I can take at home that might help my child? Do you have any educational materials or any websites I can use for resource to help my child? And, here are some questions that you can also expect from a mental health provider to ask you, the parent or caregiver, about your child. Of course, what are your child's symptoms and how severe are they? How do they impact your child's ability to function? When did you begin to first notice your child's separation anxiety? What, if anything, seems to reduce your child's anxiety? Has your child had any traumatic experiences recently or in the past? What, if any, physical or mental health conditions does your child have? Does your child take medication? Do you or any blood relatives have persistent anxiety or any mental health conditions such as depression? So that list will come in handy once you sit down in front of a mental health professional or your doctor. So some treatments for separation anxiety, of course, psychotherapy such as talk therapy, such as, outpatient therapy with a therapist, in-home counseling services, school counseling services, things like that. One of the most effective therapies for separation anxiety, of course, is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. Using CBT with a child or a teenager who has separation anxiety, a lot of reframing irrational thoughts and beliefs. So, that fear of a loved one being hurt in an accident or not coming home due to an emergency or something like that, exploring those thoughts and seeing what the root cause of those thoughts are and how we can find positive thoughts to replace that. Like I said, some medications of the separation anxiety can aid in treatment alongside CBT and other forms of therapy. Like I always say, medication isn't the answer always. Medication doesn't cure the behaviors or symptoms. If anything, medication will help your child be able to focus and help them better use the coping skills and the strategies talked about in therapy or with your doctor. Some lifestyle and home changes, and this is probably the most important thing. Typically, if your child is experiencing separation anxiety, you might be the parent, or you might be the parent of the child, but 9 times out of 10, it's the caregiver or the grandparents or the aunt, uncle who takes in this child who is dealing with this child who has separation anxiety. So first and foremost, like Dr. Pitt said, separation anxiety is nothing to just dismiss or blow off as, oh, you're just overreacting, or oh, you're just being, a big baby or anything like that. This is very serious. When children don't receive that nurturing, that love, that attention, that affection at a very early age, that does have long-lasting impact. So you being the caregiver have to understand that you also have to have a plan in place for you, because you're going to be asked of a lot by that child. Typically, children who have separation anxiety, they display a lot of confrontational behaviors because they're worried, and that's often how children communicate their worries, is through confrontation or irritation, being bothered and things like that. So having a plan for you, having a support system as a caregiver to help with your child. The more help you have, the better help you can give your child. And that's about it as far as treatment and resources. Some resources you can look up, some websites. The National Institute of Mental Health has some resources that for your local areas. Psychology Today has some activity handouts and some affirmation sheets on there for children who are dealing with separation anxiety. Affirmations are another good thing when helping children with separation anxiety, and practicing goodbyes. And one thing about practicing goodbyes with children who have separation anxiety, real quick. So those children and sometimes teenagers are stickler for time. So if you tell that child, I'm going to be here at such and such time, and even if you're a minute late, their anxiety is going to go through the roof. So be very careful about practicing goodbyes and giving time limits, or telling a child what time you're going to be there, pick them up, because if you're not there at that time or beforehand, you're going to have a problem on your hands. So be very careful of that. Make sure if you do things like that, you're talking about it with the therapist or the doctor so they know what's going on, so you can help identify any more triggers and things like that to help for more solutions. So back to you, Dr. Pitts.
Yeah, I just, every time we talk about this stuff, it always provokes additional thought in my mind. And as you were talking, Ronnie, it made me think about how children who are already suffering from separation anxiety are going to be more difficult to manage post-COVID. Their behavior will be significantly more difficult to manage, particularly if the parent caregiver that they're afraid of losing is who has been home with them through all of this virtual learning. Going back to school in person full time for these children is going to be very, very difficult. So I'm putting this out there for our listening and viewing audience. Consider the proactive measures that are going to need to be taken to address this. And then when you take into consideration so many of these children have lost parents to COVID. The world is upside down right now. It is absolutely positively upside down right now. And we cannot, everybody's fuse is a little short, particularly in light of everything that has transpired this past week. The fuses are even shorter than they've been the past year. And we need to be mindful of that. We absolutely have to be mindful of the impact that COVID is having on everyone, but particularly where separation anxiety is concerned. It is definitely going to be more difficult to manage, and I would imagine that me and Ronnie's caseload is possible to double and triple in goodness gracious. So on one hand, it's like, okay, we're busy, so we can feed our families. But on the other hand, it's deeply saddening that our cases.
I just think about like how I think about how COVID, certain things like as far as hugging somebody, hugging a loved one, you have to second guess that now. And just, when we talk about children with that skin to skin touching and that natural nurturing that mom's giving, things like that, not being able to do that, especially if you're a working mom, especially if you're a healthcare provider, whether you're a nurse or a doctor, and you just had a newborn or you have a young child, and not being able to hug them or be around them because you're so, just your fear of being in an environment where COVID is rampant and coming home and bringing that to your child. I wouldn't be shocked if we start to see more adults who develop some form of separation anxiety from, especially working at home for long periods of time, where some companies are already pushing people out to work at home till 2022 already.
Yeah. I know I'm approved for telehealth indefinitely. I was doing telehealth for my private practice anyway. But even for the agency that I work with, it's telehealth for a while because I'm not willing to take that chance. So where separation anxiety is concerned, for the parents, as you said, going back to work, having to worry about whether or not your child is okay in school, is the teacher going to get COVID, does the cafeteria work? It's a lot. It has been an exorbitant amount of pressure on us as a global society and for Black and brown persons with the disproportionate rate that COVID is killing us. It is deeply alarming. Look, folks, here's the deal. We know that these conversations are important, but we want to hear from you concerning how important they are. We want you to let us know how we're doing. We want you to join these conversations. We want your feedback and your input about the subject matter that we're covering. We want to know if we're helping you. We want to know if we're helping your family. We want to know if we're empowering you. And that being said, we want you to call us live during the show at 515-605-9744. Again, that's 515-605-9744. We also encourage you to email us at hpregame@gmail.com. And we also encourage you to download the Heritage Sports Radio Network app, and you can just do that by going to the App Store, searching for Heritage Sports Radio Network, and downloading that app and catching us, like I said, at 11 a.m. and 6 p.m. on Sunday. One of the things that we have decided to start doing once we concluded shouting out HBCUs last is we wanted to start empowering you concerning what's going on with HBCUs in the global society. So moving forward, we're going to be sharing information with you about what's going on with HBCUs and why we are so strongly encouraging you as Black persons and, persons from other ethnicities too. Let's keep that straight. Encouraging our viewing and listening audience to consider attending an HBCU. Just want to mention, and you all may have heard it, I didn't. I did not know that Columbia University's business school is seeking to diversify their student body via HBCUs. And the information that I found, had either one of you heard that?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, hadn't heard it. And this is how the story went. HBCU advocates have pointed out that when recruiters are looking to hire Black employees, they start where? At HBCU. Many have also encouraged high-achieving students to attend an HBCU for an undergraduate degree, so that's powerful information, and an Ivy League college, i.e. Columbia University, for grad school. The Dean of Columbia University's School of Professional Studies is supporting both these ideologies by partnering with 10 HBCUs and providing scholarships for its master's degree programs, pointing out a desire to meet the needs of many companies that are seeking to diversify their workforce. Dean Jason Wingard said that Columbia University will offer scholarships to students from the 10 HBCUs ranked by the Wall Street Journal as the top 10 HBCUs last year. That means that 20 students from Delaware State University, Florida A&M University, Hampton University, Morehouse College, Spelman, Tennessee State, Tuskegee, the University of the District of Columbia, and Winston-Salem State and Xavier will receive scholarships to earn their master's degrees at the 263-year-old university. They will receive a paid summer internship, industry mentorship, and a career coach. How?
Yeah.
How about that?
That's crazy.
That is dope.
That's newsworthy.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. That's dope.
Now
right
for
there.
the,
oh, man.
And as Dr. Pitt shouted out some HBCU news that's going on that people may be unaware of, that, sometimes they try to push under the rug for that reason, a lack of empowerment. But that's what we're here for. Ronnie and I are going to shout out some Black-owned businesses, specifically, coming from HBCUs as well. And the one that I'm shouting out is a clothing line, and the name of the clothing line is La Chaleur. And what La Chaleur means is heat in French, so basically heat or fire. And regarding the clothing, meaning the clothing is, top-notch quality. And it was founded in 2018, and is a brand that was influenced by luxury and innovative projects. They also are 100% hand-sewn in the United States, so they don't use cheap labor. They don't go to China or India and have people working in sweatshops. So that's the first in the U.S. Typically, everyone is outside, so that's something that is very quality and says a lot about the business. They are creative minds with backgrounds in various things. However, they felt the best way to express their creativity is through clothing. They have no formal training in fashion design, but thought and creativity. They're D.C. and New Jersey based, with an expansion of geographical clothing innovations. The founders, who is actually one of my friends, Paul Barbour, he actually attended Cheyney University where he ran track, and his co-founder, who I know by the name of Cy, he attended St. Augustine University. So, and he played football as well. So they went from that athletic background into building their business and entrepreneurship. And some notable people that have been found in their clothing. If anybody's seen I'm pretty sure everyone's seen When They See Us, the star Asante Black, one of the youngest ones on the show, he was seen in the clothing. Miami Heat, Kendrick Nunn, Dallas Mavericks, Tim Hardaway Jr., Charlotte Hornets, Dwayne Bacon, Los Angeles Clippers, Pat Beverly, among other athletes and social media celebrities as well. So La Chaleur, their Instagram is LACHLEUR.US, and their website is La Chaleur, LACHALEUR.S, that you can find them online and support their clothing line. So that's my shout out for today.
All right, bet. Shout out to is La Chaleur, right? I want to make sure I'm saying that.
Yeah, La Chaleur. La Chaleur.
I'm gonna have to check them. I'm gonna have to check them out. Shout out to La Chaleur. So my shout out for this week, I would be remiss if I didn't do this, if I didn't shout out the home team. So my first Black-owned business that I'm shouting out is my very own wife's, Mrs. Ransom, her hair salon, Styled by Neek. She's been her own salon boss for the last 5 years, has her own salon, her own building. She specializes in natural hair care, so all natural hairstyles. Her most famous service is her Deluxe Silk Press, which is a natural hair service. She also specializes in crochet braids. She makes custom wigs, custom order wigs that you can order off her website. She also has some wigs that are already ready. She makes custom shirts, such as Black Love shirts and Don't Mind Me, I'm Minding My Black-Owned Business, amongst other shirts. She has a website, stylesbyneek.com. You can go on there and book your service or purchase a shirt. She also has a newsletter as well when you go on her website that you can subscribe to keep up with all promotions, all events and things like that going on. So shout out to my wife. Ladies, I'm going to let you know right now, you better book your appointment now before June gets here, because when June get here, she's going to be a full-time mother. So, but, you know, she'll be back. She'll be back eventually. She will be back. But if you're in the 804 area or in the state of Virginia, you know, please come check her out. If you want to take care of your natural hair or, you know, keep it protected and stuff like that, please come check her out. Like I said, her website is stylesbyneek, NEEK.com. Her Instagram page is stylesbyneek_, and her Facebook is stylesbyneek. So shout out to my wife and her business.
That sounds like she needs to start her own line of hair care products too. Just saying,
Hey.
Good tell her Dr. Fitz planted that seed.
All right.
I got you.
So we'll need y'all to pray on that and go ahead and make that happen, because I need something for this hair. It's just unruly and crazy. It's just wavy, curly. It just does whatever it wants to do whenever it wants to do it. And then, of course, as a woman of color, like, I haven't used hair grease on my scalp in years. Your hair moisturized. You still need to be able to do something to keep it moisturized so that it's not breaking and brittle and falling off. The challenge with that is that the oil in the moisturizers are getting on the pillowcase. Okay, well, there's nothing sexy. You know, it's my junk. I don't do rollers. Let's just say, Dr. Fitz, I do not do hair rollers. I don't do the mum draws. I don't do none of that stuff. But the hair rollers.
Dr. Fitz, we're going to have to find a way to get you to Virginia.
Yeah,
right.
Look, that's just like, Dr. Fitz will travel. I got a passport and air miles and everything else. But yeah, seriously, like I need hair care products that can continue to help me to nurture and grow and love on my hair and my scalp without destroying my business. Like, I don't want to sleep with a scarf on my head. I'm ill. Yes. I won't do that.
You might have to get you a silk pillowcase.
Yeah, but once the oil
so pillowcases.
He slide. No, didn't one of the comedians talk about slide?
We're gonna get you right. We're gonna get you right, Dr. Pitts. We're gonna find a way to get you to Virginia and get you in good hands.
Dr. Pitts, I need her to work that on out. Work it on out.
Now that
all right.
That hair industry. I just wanted to say something. It just came to my mind, like with the hair industry being so big, and with Dr. Pitts, and you talking about getting to Virginia, it would be crazy if in the future some type of artificial intelligence is created where people can do hair through having a system at the person who needs their hair done. And I know there's a software you could like put your hands over a computer and it does what you want it to do, like in person. That would be something crazy, artificial intelligence. That'll increase people's revenue right there. I just thought about that. Maybe his wife could look into that down the line, become the next the female Jeff Bezos.
I'm gonna have to tweet Elon Musk, see if we can get that in motion.
Right, and you're gonna need a cut.
I'm gonna need a big cut. He can spare some.
Exactly.
Okay. So Jared, before you kick us off, I want to say this.
Mm-hmm.
We want to make sure that everybody is following us on social media. Me, I'm easy. It's Dr. Lauren Pitts, Lauren D. Pitts, any one of those. We didn't create a social media platform specifically for a game because it's part of the umbrella, right? But we want to encourage our viewing and listening audience to absolutely follow us on social media so that as we are doing our due diligence and making sure that we are repping HBCUs, making sure that we are loving on Black and brown-owned businesses all across the nation, we want to make sure that our viewing and listening audience are getting this information too. So we want to make sure that we're posting all of this information on our various platforms as well. Jared, let them know what we're doing today. This is a good one, y'all. This is a good one. Good one.
We got a good one. Another one of them topics that needs to be spoken about that sometimes isn't spoken because it definitely can be sensitive, and it's dealing with student athletes and parenthood and sports, academics, and children. And we're going to discuss how some student athletes come on campus already as parents, and while others become parents while they're on campus, and the dual role as an athlete in a student environment that actually can increase the likelihood of engaging in behavioral risk, including sexual activity that results in parenthood. And we're going to talk about if the NCAA has parenting policies, what's the emotional health concerns for athletes who are parents, what role, if any, do coaches and trainers play in supporting our student athletes who do become parents on campus? Are there any resources available on campus for the student athlete with children? We'll talk how that separation anxiety that Dr. Pitts and Ronnie hit on in the beginning, how that affects the student athlete and their performance. Do they struggle to get into the zone? Are they failing academically? How does it affect their appetite, which then affects their performance, and so much more. So we're going to talk about all of those things and how our student athletes are at risk and how they can overcome that situation if they are involved in it, and what positives they can take from it. Because anytime you bring a child into this world, it should be a positive thing. And it's just sometimes people are in different situations, but you have to know how to use the people around you and your resources to get through whatever tough time you're in. And for me, I didn't have a parent. I didn't have a child while I was in school, but I did have some teammates who did end up being parents at a young age, and I've seen how they kind of had to navigate. And just from my perspective, it seems like it's a very challenging thing to take on while you're playing a sport at the high level, and you want to get your degree. You want to be attentive in class. From the aspect of staying awake in class and things like that, it seems like it's pretty difficult. So much respect to anyone out there who has it. But we're going to get into that and share our personal thoughts, stories, facts, research, and go from there.
So I've lived it. I've absolutely positively lived it twofold, actually. I was just sitting here thinking that when I got pregnant with Andre, it was his father's freshman year in college. We found out pregnant 3 weeks after the season started, his freshman year at the College of William and Mary. In addition to that, it just dawned on me that my former husband was actually a father his senior year in high school. So he went into his freshman year at Dell State already a father. Andre wasn't born until the end of his father's freshman year in college, but we lived it. We breathed it. We struggled through it. It was a challenge. There's endless pictures of Andre as a baby bundled up at his dad's football games. And then, as he got older holding the football and his dad holding him in his uniform, go William and Mary Tribe, right? It was challenging. I remember being so afraid to tell his dad that I was pregnant out of fear that it would be a distraction to him. He very easily could have gone to William and Mary on a full academic scholarship, but part of his trip to William and Mary was athletic, and I just didn't want it to be a distraction for him. I didn't want to stress him out. And I remember when I went in and told him, I said, what would you have done? I had waited until Thanksgiving or waited until William and Mary's homecoming always fell on my birthday weekend. I said, what would you have done had I waited until homecoming or Thanksgiving break to tell you? He said, I'd have said, who's that? Who's that? I'm like, really? But I get it, right? Yeah. I wish I could have connected with him to get him to come on the show today to find out, because he never verbalized to me that it stressed him out, but I can only imagine to some degree. It had to. It had to because
Absolutely.
He was not working. You know what I mean? He was not working. He was going to school full time. He was a full-time athlete. He was a starter. He didn't work. He worked in the summers. He worked during the summer months, but during the school year, he wasn't able to work. So it fell on me financially, and thank God we had the support of both of our families to get us through that time, because financially it was taxing. It was very, very taxing. And then because when I found that I was pregnant, it was 3 weeks before I was scheduled to go back to school my sophomore year, because I was transferring from Howard to a PWI, and we were on a trimester basis at the school that I transferred to. I wasn't able to go back to school. I was not able to go back to school because I was a high-risk pregnancy, and his mom and my mom were like, yeah, that's you. We need you here close to us. So I ended up being in South Jersey until Andre was a year old. I went back to school. I went to the community college right after he was born to make up my credits, and then when he was a year old, I transferred. But it kicked our behind.
I have a question because I think a lot of times you look at it as especially if it's a male that's playing a sport, it's kind of looked at as they have to be kind of protected and let them still play their sport, let them still go to school. And then the female kind of is the one who leaves school, takes a step back, and not saying everything is on her, but everything is on her. Like, how would you advise male athletes to communicate to their partner, because sometimes they may want to force her to not have the child? Like, what's your take on that from your experience? Did you experience that, and how can it better be communicated, from the male to the female?
I tell you guys, I am so blessed and so fortunate. Hindsight is 20/20, right? When we were in it, it was hard. But one thing I can always say, despite the challenges that Andre's father and I had, he was always supportive of me bettering myself. He was always supportive of that. His parents and my parents were like, having this baby is not going to be an excuse to not finish school. And I'm just going to be butt naked transparent with y'all. I went on welfare for a year so that I could get back in school at the community college and make up those credits that I missed from that year that I had to take off. And I did what I had to do. Both parents helped us as far as childcare was concerned. They helped as far as, because I was working and going to school. I was working and I was working full time. I was going to school full time. I was taking care of Andre, and I'm telling you, family support so huge. So the direct answer to your question, Jared, is, and Rob, you said it earlier in the show, these kids didn't ask to be here. Andre's father and I behaved irresponsibly. We behaved irresponsibly. I was telling Ronnie before the show, I'm going to give you all the G version of it, but I was telling Ronnie before the show that we behaved irresponsibly where appropriate conduct was concerned. We did not take any measures to guard from me getting pregnant. And in that, in essence, some would argue that we planned for me to get pregnant because we take the appropriate responsible steps to avoid that. That being said, folks got to own it. Folks have to own it. And if you're going to bring these children into the world, you have to be willing to take proper care of them. I remember one of the things that my mom said at the time that I pushed back on. You all have heard me say that it took me 17 years to finish my bachelor's degree. It didn't have to. It didn't have to. I'm stubborn and I'm strong-willed, and I was determined that I was going to go to school where I wanted to go to school. Whereas my mom's argument was, go to the University of Delaware, go to, at that time it was Glassboro State College, it's now Glassboro University. Go to one of the local schools that has a decent program and go ahead and finish. They weren't saying don't get your degree. They were saying it's not cool for you to be in Rhode Island and Alan to be in Virginia. That's what they were saying. But at the time, I was. So what I want folks to know is you have to be willing, maturity says, be willing to make the necessary adjustments to continue your education, because you're going to need it to take care of this baby. Continue your education, make the necessary adjustments. If you don't have family support systems, you need to find community support systems that are in place, because they're there. The community support systems are there. And many of the schools have systems in place, particularly our HBCUs. There are systems in place because so many black and brown persons are coming to school as parents. There are systems in place that can help you to parent effectively while you're in school, whether you're a student athlete or not.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I know Ronnie was talking about, I think it was a situation where a female was pregnant and it ran into the issues of her not being able to continue with her scholarship, possibly. I think that's something that real comes up, especially with the year-by-year basis on a scholarship. If I get pregnant next year as a female, am I going to have my scholarship? And if you want to talk about that, because I think that's real interesting.
Yeah, when we talk about, I saw this quote when it concerned parenting and careers, and it said, men can have both. Men can have a career and be a parent. However, females have to choose. Either I'm going to be all in on my career and my child gets what's left, or I'm all in on my child and my career gets what's left. So I found this article on ESPN from back in 2007, and they interviewed this student athlete who played at Clemson. And she talked about how her and 4 other female student athletes during the academic year 2006-2007, they were all pregnant. All 5 of them ended up getting abortions because during that year at Clemson, when you were a student athlete, you signed a policy saying that if you were to get pregnant and you chose to keep the child while you were a student athlete at Clemson, you had a very strong chance of losing your scholarship. So a lot of these females, and this female in particular, this was her second time getting an abortion because she had got pregnant the previous semester, got an abortion, and then found out going into this season that she was pregnant again. So funny how when this story had broke on ESPN the following year, Clemson had got rid of that policy and then basically said, well, we're not going to talk about that policy because it doesn't exist anymore, but, it was there at one point in time. And I just found that to be, just absolutely stunning because, as a female student athlete, even though, most female student athletes, they play the sport because they truly love the sport, and a lot of them aren't looking to go professional. Most of them are, but I would say a lot of them probably aren't looking to go professional just because of the inequality when it comes to pay between males and females. However, the chance that you have to lose out on your education because of a choice you made, and even though you're able to show that you can still perform as a student athlete to the highest ability and maintain your academic level, I don't think you should be you shouldn't have to lose your scholarship. And Jared, I don't know if you remember this story from back in 2011, but there was a basketball player at BYU named Brandon Davis who was kicked off the team right before March Madness for having sex with his girlfriend. Yeah. I remembered that story when I was in high school, but I didn't really pay attention to it. So I went back and read the article last night. So BYU is one of the select amount of schools across the country, and I'll name off some other ones as well. So we have BYU, Bob Jones University, Oral Roberts University, Pepperdine University, Notre Dame, Fordham University, Providence College, Chicago State, and Louisiana Tech University. All 10 of these schools have policies where sex is banned on campus. At BYU specifically, and all these schools are private colleges, and so what I read was private colleges are allowed to, they're private, so as long as they have funding for the school, they're allowed to set the policies and things like that. And one of the policies that Brandon Davis had signed at BYU was you're not allowed to have sex, you're not allowed to drink alcohol, drink coffee, or smoke while you're a student at BYU. Otherwise, you face getting kicked out of school. So not only did he lose his scholarship, he was kicked out of the entire school for having sex. And, while most kids at that age, and he was a junior at this time, and I remember he was actually in the running for National Player of the Year during that season. So he lost everything. And I can't remember if he ever got picked up by an NBA team or not, but, something that a lot of kids do on every college campus. He lost his scholarship and his chance at school because of that.
Now, I doubt he was the only one. I wonder, like for Clemson, I wonder if they knew up front about that policy or it was just somewhere thrown in where you just look over it. I wonder if that was the case.
So from what I read is, during the 2006-2007 academic year, it was still in place. And then the following year, they kind of had like a upheaval of everybody in the athletic department where they had a brand new athletic director, they had a brand new activities coordinator. Everybody who handled all the policies and stuff were brand new. And when they were asked about it, they were basically like, well, that was the old guard. We have nothing to do about that. We're not going to talk about it. But they did acknowledge that it did exist, but they didn't go into detail about it. And I tried to look up how many other schools had this policy for female student athletes because it's crazy. At that point, you're really deciding, do I want to bring a child into this world or do I want to continue to keep my scholarship? And that's a tough decision to make. And I don't know if, and Dr. Pitts, I don't know how much you know about this as well or if you want to speak on it, but a lot of women who do get abortions, they have a hard time, conceiving again if they really want to have a child. So making this decision, at 18, 19 years old can have, drastic consequences later on in life.
So
now, do you think? Now, go ahead, Dr. Pitts. Go ahead. You was about to say
something? Yeah, I'm debating. So Ronnie, to your point about the abortions, having had one of those and knowing a number of women who have, just based on personal experience, there's definitely been some challenges with women's ability to conceive moving forward. Abortions are a violent and traumatic, I got you, Ronnie. Abortions are a violent and very, very emotionally and physically traumatic experience, dependent upon what stage of the pregnancy that occurs. And let me just say to the listening and viewing audience, and I just feel the need to say this, don't judge me, don't criticize me, don't judge or criticize anyone who has made that decision. That decision is between them, hopefully the father of the child, if they know who the father of the child is, and it is between those two and whomever they deem as their higher power. But the last thing on earth any woman needs when making such a difficult, life-altering decision is to be judged and criticized. So please don't do that. But there is definitely research to support that having an abortion can do irreversible harm and adversely affect a woman's ability to carry future pregnancies full term, if to conceive at all, dependent upon whether or not damage was done. The other thing that I wanted to on is, the NCAA has now they have a model pregnancy and parenting policies in place. But I found some alarming statistics that are deeply concerning that they discovered in preparing that model. And they found that many athletic departments are not prepared to handle athletes, female athletes getting pregnant. A survey of policies in athletic departments found that 85% of Division I schools have no policy. 94% of Division II schools have no policy. 98% of Division III schools have no policy. So when we look at how that impacts HBCUs, that's a problem. When you look at the pregnancy statistics among Black and brown women, for the vast majority of our institutions of higher learning not have pregnancy policies in place in their athletic departments is deeply concerning to me. And I think that it's a recipe for folks to consider abortion as a primary option to terminate the pregnancy. I can tell you, as I said, having had one, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I would not wish that experience on my worst enemy. I just would not. I will also say, though, that these pregnancy and parenting policies that the NCAA has, that they're in the process of trying to get in place, their purpose to empower athletic departments. They are designed to provide a safe environment for student athletes to disclose pregnancy. They are purposed to manage physical and mental health, because then I can tell you whether your pregnancy takes a toll on your mental health. Let's just keep that real. It is taxing on the body. It is taxing the mind. And when you factor in all of the other things, in particular, that student athletes encounter, it is definitely something that needs to be taken into consideration when managing one's physical and mental. It is designed to men and women fairly and equitably. It is designed to facilitate continued academic progress, to return to athletics, and to graduate. This is such an important topic. It is such an important topic, and it is one, I don't know about you all, part of the reason why we decided to do the show is because we're not hearing these conversations. We're not hearing these conversations, and these conversations are definitely ones that need to be had in our communities all across the nation and really all around the world.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And there's and I'm not sure if there's a higher rate of basketball players who, while on campus, become fathers, or football players. From doing some research, it seems like basketball players, they say, is an overlooked phenomenon, and I think it's because they're visible, on campus. They know who you are because you never have a helmet on like a football player. If you're in a big college community, you go out to a restaurant, people know who you are by face, more so before you have to have that conversation. So I think there's kind of added pressure to basketball players where they have to control themselves a little bit and not get sucked into that environment where they do become fathers. And there was a documentary I watched about a basketball player. He was a top player from Chicago, Kaisi Sykes, I believe his name is. his last name is Sykes, but he has a kid at 16 years old in high school, and he ended up going to college on a scholarship out of state. And he had said that he drove about 80 times in his college career back and forth to Chicago to pick his son up and bring him back to campus. And you think about that's a huge toll mentally, financially, gas, if your car has problems where you need to get repairs and things like that. And then the documentary I watched, he was sharing a room already with his teammates, and they all were there, and then his son would come, and it was like a family in the way that they all kind of cared for his son and things like that. But it really delved into how it takes a toll on him, and luckily he was able to overcome it and things like that. But it's definitely something that is serious. I don't have any experience of players having their kids in the dorm or anything like that, but I do know it seemed like it was tough for some of them, and sometimes it would result in them not playing or losing playing time because the performance may drop. And as a coach, what's your responsibility at that point? Do you sympathize with the student athlete because they have a child, or do you just say it's strictly business? If you got a child and you can't perform on the field, you're not playing. I think that's another thing that comes into play as well when we talk about student athletes with kids.
And
to your point, Jared, go ahead, Dr. Fitz.
No, go ahead. I'll do it when you get done.
To your point, Jared, about there's interesting that, and I can see basketball players kind of being more prone to being fathers as student athletes than football players. I think, me personally, I always thought it might have been 50-50, but to your point, with these players getting exposed as early as 13 and 14 with these ranking systems now, and, these kids are getting notoriety and stuff before they even touch on college campus, and when they finally get there, I think, and we hear this a lot, especially, the better the athlete, they always tell you, you have to be careful about people coming to you for opportunities, and you putting yourself in position where somebody can make an opportunity off of you or $1 off of you without it being detrimental to you. And I think, me personally, I can't relate to, somebody who had a lot of acclaim and stuff coming out of high school and getting notoriety and stuff, so I can't sit there and say how that is. But being on campus, being a student athlete on campus, you do get some type of notoriety just no matter what school you're at, being a student athlete, especially a football player. He's part of the football team. So people already have assumptions about you, even if they have no idea who you are on campus. They just know that you're a football player, a basketball player, so they feel like, oh, well, this person has opportunity, or I might, make an opportunity off of this person by, doing, making adult decisions and things like that. And for me personally, I would say this, I didn't see a lot of people pregnant on campus when I was in school, but I did have 4 teammates during my, 4 years of playing who did become fathers. And to your point, Dr. Pitts, about family support, the one teammate who had his son our junior year, and he told, he had told all of us after the homecoming game that he had his son. I will say his family played a huge part in the development of him being able to finish off his degree, being able to finish off his playing career while they took care of the baby with, his baby mother and stuff like that. They did a really good job. I had another teammate who wasn't so fortunate. It was kind of just him and his baby mother who were kind of, trying to make things work. And he struggled. He was actually a starter too. I will say he didn't allow it to impact his playing career on the field, but off the field, he had to make a lot of, choices. Am I going to go to class, or am I going to, go try and make some money so I can have some food for my son and stuff at the apartment and whatnot.
Right.
So it's tough.
Now,
go ahead.
Talking about what you just said about, going to class or being with your child or working to make money, I wonder if in the future there will be some policy, as Dr. Fisher mentioned, there's a lack of policies across NCAA, but something that maybe you're allowed to give a stipend or an increased stipend to somebody who does have a child, but then I know they'll probably say, well, they're being irresponsible, why should we give them a stipend? But I think that's something that could help, and that would be interesting to see if that comes into play at some point.
I think 2 things can be true. I think you can be, let's call it, I'll speak for myself. I feel like at that age, if you make that decision to have intercourse with somebody and, you know, the female gets pregnant, or if you the female gets pregnant, you have made a choice at that point in time, and, you know, you have to deal with what it is, you know, like we talked about earlier, you know, whether or not you want to be a parent at 18 or 28 or 38, whatever the case may be, that child is coming, you know. The child didn't actually be here. The child didn't actually be put in a situation, but they're here. So you made this decision. However, and to your point, Jared, I also think whether you're a male student-athlete or a female student-athlete, look, nobody's perfect. And, you know, I think it would be irrational of older adults or, you know, anybody that's older than a college student-athlete to sit there and say, oh, well, they're not just supposed to live their life. All college campuses have kids who interact and, you know, adult, you know, intercourse and things like that. It's not just like it's student-athletes doing it. All kids on college campuses do it. You know, however, for student-athletes, I mean, let's be real. While these schools are still making money and profiting off these student-athletes, I mean, you should have something in place for these student-athletes, whether they're male or female. And if you're a male student-athlete and you make the decision to bring a child into this world, there should be some type of support. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to stay on that football team or basketball team and continue to play, you're still generating revenue for that school. That doesn't change. That doesn't stop. So you're still generating. You're still doing your job for the school. So the school should be able to make some type of accommodation. I was reading an article through the Associated Press that was focusing on Temple University back in 2017, and their starting running back who was a senior. He talked about when he was getting recruited. He's from New Jersey. Let me see what part of New Jersey he's from. You might know where this is, Dr. Pitts. Atlantic City, of course. His name was David Hood. David Hood IV. I don't know if that name rings any bells, Dr. Pitts, but he talked about how when he was getting recruited by Temple, he actually had his sister and his grandmother hide his son and said that was his nephew because he was at fear, you know, the schools might pull back and stuff. But once he got there, come to find out the head coach at the time, Matt Rule, who's actually the head coach for the Carolina Panthers, there was 4 of his teammates who were fathers going into his senior year. So Matt Rule had a stipulation where on Sunday where they would have mandatory workouts and stuff, those 4 student athletes were allowed to go be with their children and have extra time with their children. And, you know, the coaches also made sure that those players, you know, if there was an emergency, if they had a doctor's appointment or something at school or something like that, they were allowed to be excused from practice or whatever situation to go tend to their children. I thought that was remarkable on his part to do that because, you know, like we said, me and Jared weren't fathers while we were playing football, but just playing football in college is enough to keep you busy. Throwing on top of being fatherhood on top of that, I can only imagine the stress, the choices you have to make on a day-to-day basis. So, you know, shout out to Matt Rule for putting that at Temple during that time, and I think more colleges should adopt that policy for their male student-athletes at least.
Yeah, I think it's – go ahead, Dr. Pitt.
It's okay. I just wanted to – a couple of points that you all made. The emotional health piece is huge. It is absolutely positively huge. And one of the things that the NCAA is considering is that, and we alluded to it, is that the unplanned pregnancy really can be a traumatic experience. It's, you know, college campuses, there's a lot of irresponsible behavior going on. There's a lot of sexually risky behaviors going on. So in the grand scheme, in some cases, not all, in some cases, when you don't put the place to protect yourself from getting pregnant, in essence, you're planning to get pregnant. Unless there's some reason why you can't physically conceive, if you're not using precautionary measures, you're planning to get pregnant. It is what it is. And finding that out can be, as you all have shared stories, that can be a very experience. The other thing is that there are so many decisions that are confronting these student athletes, and those decisions can be overwhelming, and you get very well too. And it can't emphasize that enough. You know, Andre was conceived and born at a time where all the technology that we have now wasn't available. So now, you know, folks can go to virtual doctor's appointments. They can hear the ultrasound of the baby's heart without physically being in the room. They can be there for parent-teachers conferences, or if there's some other type of challenge going on, a regular physical when the child gets the shots or what have you. The technology that we have now affords student athletes the opportunity to stay plugged in, to stay engaged, even though they might not be physically present. And I think, to your point, that it's important as we consider that student athletes may experience fear of abandonment by their primary support system, whether it be family or the boyfriend or the girlfriend or the coach and the teammate. Keeping a strong primary support system is going to be paramount for the emotional well-being and the performance of that student athlete. It is going to be absolutely positively critical. So definitely applaud him for making those 4 athletes who are parents, their parenthood, a priority in his program. It should be a priority in everybody's program, because when this goes unaddressed, it not only can do damage to the psyche of the student athlete, it can do damage to the psyche of this child as the child grows up. And for those females that decide to have the baby, and even for the male athlete, you know, the reality, and Ronnie, I think you said this, there's going to be some role changes, and folk have to be willing to respect that. And penalizing the student athlete or scaring them into an abortion is so unacceptable on so many. It feels criminal to me. It really does.
It's inhumane.
It is absolutely, positively. It's not okay. There needs to be a level of safety for the student athletes, whether it be the pregnant female or the father, to disclose and to know that their confidentiality is going to be maintained, just like all other HIPAA regulations must be honored, and that they're safe. They're safe on these campuses. They're safe in their locker rooms. They're safe in their dorms and on the field or on the court, to be able to parent effectively and to have that support of that team to do so.
Yeah, I think that Temple situation is pretty interesting, that the running back didn't want to let them know that he had a kid, because in that article talking about child basketball players, you know, coming to fatherhood, there was, in 2015, Mississippi State, they had 5 players on the team who had kids. And the coach had a birthday party for his son, and he didn't know they had kids until 2 of them brought 2 of their children with them. And it's kind of like, okay, a coach has a child. Why is it not okay for me as a player to have a child? And the coach is often putting more time into, you know, coaching, meetings, practice, all of that stuff, but they are back financially, which is different than a player. But I just think that you shouldn't go to it with the psyche of you have to hide your child. I don't know if you guys saw the film Safety, the one about the player at Clemson who he didn't have a child, but I think it's another level of separation anxiety when these student athletes are maybe they have a little brother and maybe they're the father figure for that younger brother, and they go away to school across country. You know, how is the younger brother going to cope with that? Is he going to stay on the straight path? Is he going to have separation anxiety? Is the student athlete going to have separation anxiety from him? And I think based off that movie, what the first thing he should have done is said something. He tried to hide it. So I think the student athlete, if you speak up and say something, more times than not the coaches and the community will support you. What'd you say?
They need to feel safe. So when I look at that through my clinical lens, there's so many different ways that the anxiety can arise, right? The anxiety of associated with being afraid that your team and your coaches are going to find out that you have a child that you didn't disclose. The anxiety associated with being away from the child if something happens. the anxiety associated with your girl finding out that you on campus doing your thing. There's, you know what I mean? The anxiety associated with the fact that you got a baby at home and one coming on campus. There's a lot of anxiety that we see arising within the context of student athletes and parenthood. Mm-hmm. And there just very simply has to be support systems and measures put in place to address it, because let's face it, it's not going anywhere. I mean, folk are going to have sex. People are not always going to behave responsibly. Student athletes are going to get pregnant. Student athletes are going to father children while they're playing. And it's not something that can be ignored. It needs to be treated with the same, in my opinion, it needs to be treated with the same level of seriousness as substance use and abuses among the athletes. You just you have to take it very, very seriously, because there's so much emotional damage that can be experienced if, you know, just imagine the student athlete that doesn't disclose that they have a child, and then, God forbid, something tragic happens to that child. Mm-hmm. And your coaches and your teammates in the school don't even know that you have a kid. What the heck? Mm-hmm. There's something wrong with that picture. That's true. But these folk have to be, if people are going to be vulnerable and transparent and disclose, I believe that type of disclosure should be held to the same standard as other HIPAA matters are protected. It should be a HIPAA protected measure.
And I think it's also interesting, just to chime in real quick, some people base the student athletes or athletes having children, out of wedlock and things like that, not in a position to really care for the child. They kind of bring it back to the how athletes are, quote unquote, extremists. And I don't know if you guys heard about the Olympics and what goes on behind the scenes at the Olympics. But in 2013, they reported that since the 2000 Sydney Olympics, the organizers of the Summer and Winter Games ordered over 100,000 condoms for the Olympic Village. And that's what they say goes on at the Olympics. And some of those people are in college and they're not out of college yet, and they go there, they may end up having a child and things like that. So they're saying that athletes are kind of more prone to have unexpected pregnancies and things like that. And somebody said that at the Olympics, they've never witnessed so much debauchery in their entire life. And I wonder, I know being on college campus, I wouldn't say it's so much like athletes and athletes, female athletes, male athletes, that are engaging in sexual activity, because it's also the general student population as well. But I think it comes into the machoism, the competitiveness, how many, can you have, how many do you not have, that becomes a thing. And I think that leads to parenthood on a college campus. And is that preventable? I don't think so. I think the only thing that we can do is prepare to better support them when it does happen. Because like Ronnie said, it goes on. It's not going to stop.
I think it's systemic. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think it's systemic. I think that behavioral sex practices start in one's youth, and how a person views their sexuality and their freedom is contingent oftentimes based upon the examples that they see, peer pressure, and that starts in middle school. And if it's not appropriately addressed with conversations from the parents or caregivers or those influential adults in the child's life as they are maturing and progressing and exploring, then I think it leaves us wide open for this to be the issue that we're seeing on our college campuses. But now throw a monkey wrench, because, hello, look at the issues in the league. What? Oh, my goodness. Whether it's the NBA, the MLB, MLB or the NFL. Folk are putting it down. Travel, groupies, it's so easy to have so much come as men. It's so easy to have so much coming at you. You can't catch it with a catcher's mitt. And as females, I mean, look here, Dr. Fiscal being transparent again. I told my men folks before the show. I was what's the G version? I was a creative genius when I was in undergrad. How y'all like that? That's the G version. I was a creative genius. What? You know, it was a oasis. It was a oasis. It's still a oasis. It is like, ooh, look at all of these. Look at all of this candy in this here candy store, and it's free. Y'all know free high, the best high you can get. It's free. Free. So you come pregnant and find out that the girl's name that you don't remember is pregnant. I know somebody that happened to. It was a one-night stand, and they found out, I want to say the child was like 7 or 8, when the female and the guy that she was going with separated. And all those years, she ended up marrying the dude, and the dude thought that the kid was his.
Dang.
It wasn't his, and it wasn't until they separated. Rick up. Wasn't until they separated, and dude said, "I'm taking my son with me," and she said, sorry, here's part, because she knew. She knew.
Dang. That's terrible.
And yeah, so dude, the real dad didn't find out until the kid was like 7, 8, 9 years old that he had a son from a one-night stand. And how he found out was his boy, who knew that he had got with her, was like, yo, remember X, Y, and Z, this, that, and the third? And he was like, bruh, I think you need to get a DNA test. And the DNA test came back. And oh, by the way, he was a student athlete. He was a student athlete playing basketball, and it was like, hit it and quit it, even moving, and didn't even know.
So do y'all think with this whole name, image, and likeness thing getting ready to take off in the next couple of years, how do you think that's going to impact student athletes as far as like, because now female athletes can start to profit off their name, image, and likeness. So maybe the thought of, do I want to keep this baby or not? Maybe that changes because now there might be a means to support the baby and still be a student athlete. I don't think, and I will say this, and I won't say, I'll just speak for myself. I don't encourage people to go out here and have unprotected sex, especially, whether you're, especially student athletes. Look, at the end of the day, do you want to have fun? If you want to have fun, have at it. You're young, have at it, do what you got to do. But use your brain. And for men, use the brain that's up here.
I mean, for real. I'm sorry, Ronnie. I cut you off for 3, 4, 5
Go ahead.
So society has a habit of putting all of the responsibility on you as men. That's not fair. Y'all know Dr. Fitz advocate for the brothers. That's not fair. We have to own up and take their part of the responsibility too. Unless there's a situation or circumstance where you were sexually assaulted, you are just as culpable as the dude is. If you are not in a situation or circumstance where you were sexually assaulted, you are just as culpable as the man is for conceiving this child. And chicks have got to start taking responsibility, ownership, accountability for their your responsibility as well. He got me pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Girl,
we both got you pregnant.
Look,
we got each other. We
got you pregnant and had fun doing it. You was a willing participant. Okay.
I think with the image, name, and likeness that Ronnie mentioned, that that's going. I think that's going to bring an increase in situations where it's unplanned parenthood or abortions are going to tick, because now a lot of times they're banking on 3 to 4 years from now. Okay, you got the potential to make some money, go to the NFL, NBA, whatever sport. Now it's like, okay, now you're getting money while you're in college, and you might get some more when you go to the league. So, as a female, they
even if you don't go to the league,
why not take advantage of this right now, and things like that. So I think that's going to be an increase in unplanned parenthood, which is going to need further resources and things like that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting, man, especially on these college campuses. I wonder how it is. Some schools are open with COVID. I know Bowie State has students on campus, and it's probably an increase in like sexual activity because you're just stuck on campus now. It's like a
quarantine babies are in full effect.
You know what I'm saying?
To that point, as we're wrapping up, that was actually something, and I can touch on it, or we can touch on it next week. I'll throw it out there for the stuff that's going on with HBCUs. There is funding. There has been additional funding provided for HBCUs. I want to say it was 10 or 15 of them to do COVID testing on campus. So I'll share that information next week. I just wanted to say real quick before we wrap up, when you were talking about financial support and maybe a stipend or something like that from the schools, when students fill out pre-application for federal student aid, a.k.a. the FAFSA, there is a line item on there that asks you if you have any dependents. If you have dependents and you put it on there, it's going to increase the amount of aid that you're eligible for. Because particularly as an athlete, if you're not working or if you're only working part-time, it's going to lower your expected family contributions, which in turn is going to raise the amount of aid that you qualify for in addition to your athletic scholarship. So if you're eligible for a Pell Grant or whatever, even a student loan, just keep that in mind, and certainly you can hit us up and ask that. Well, look, folks, I love these conversations. I absolutely love these conversations. Let's face it, they're not happening. They are not happening, and the information that we're sharing with you, our viewing and listening audience week after week after week is pertinent information. It is powerful information. It is information that is purposed to educate you, to empower you, to liberate you, and to encourage you to transform your lives. We want you to call in during the show, week in and week out. You can always do that at 515-605-9744. We want you to email us with your comments and questions at htpregame@gmail.com. And we want you to check us out on Heritage Sports Radio Network and show them some love week after week after week, too, because the work that we are doing as a family is extraordinary in our Black and brown communities all over the nation. As always, Ronnie, Jared, I love y'all. Y'all my babies. Y'all my servants.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah.
We miss you. Hurry the heck up, boys. Come on here and join us. We need your input. Look, folks, until next week, we want you to stay safe. Don't get caught up in all this craziness that's going on in the world. Make good choices. Stay positive and productive. Here at House Talk Pregame, we love you, we value you, we appreciate you, and we will holler at you next week. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Have a good week. Be easy.